There's a tax problem with being an accidental landlord. Hi, this is financial planner Sean Mullaney. Let's discuss. So in the year 2023, there are plenty of Americans sitting on large capital gains in their primary residences. And it's a mobile population. So there are folks who move because they want to change school districts for their kids, or they want to be closer to family members, or they got a new job and the job requires a move. And so the question becomes, well, do I sell now or do I become a landlord? What I, Sean Mullaney, refer to as the accidental landlord. And there's some advantages of going the landlord route, right? You get to collect rental income. You get to keep the house. So if the house keeps appreciating, you get to benefit from that. And you get depreciation deductions. So that's very helpful to shelter some or all of that rental income from ordinary income tax. So we like that. But there's a unique opportunity when you leave your primary residence, and that is the capital gains exclusion of $250,000 of gain per person. That's $500,000 for a married couple. You sell your primary residence, you can qualify for that gain exclusion, which can be very lucrative, but you only qualify if you've lived in the primary residence for 2 out of the previous 5 years. So what happens is when you move away and you decide to become an accidental landlord, you've essentially lit a 3-year fuse. And at the end of the 3 years, that capital gains exclusion I mentioned, $250,000 per person, that vanishes. So let's put some numbers to this. Let's say you live in Austin, Texas, and 5 years ago you bought your primary residence, you and your wife, say, for $500,000. And today it's worth $900,000. And so now let's say, you want to move for whatever reason, okay? So you could become an accidental landlord, take depreciation deductions. You have to use the $500,000 basis less than any land value, but okay, fine. That's fine. That works, and you get rental income that's tax advantaged. Or you could sell and you and your wife get the $400,000 capital gain in my example, totally federal income tax free. That's a really nice outcome. You can get that outcome for the next 3 years. Now, if you start renting it out, you'll have a little bit of depreciation recapture that cannot be sheltered by that. But that depreciation recapture in my example is not going to be a huge number. It's going to be something, but not huge. But you have basically 3 years. And if you wait to sell that rental real estate after more than 3 years have passed, no capital gain exclusion, right? So the entire gain now is fully subject to federal and potentially state income tax. So that's not a good outcome. And you basically are lighting that fuse if you decide to become the accidental landlord. You've got this gain exclusion, but it's only going to last for 3 years if you move out of that house, assuming you've already lived in it for 2 years. So that's an interesting issue, and I think it's something to consider before we decide, oh yeah, I'm just going to rent that thing out, because isn't renting always the best tax path? Well, not necessarily. I will say there are 3 caveats, right? One caveat is we don't know future investment returns. And in theory, that Austin house that's worth $900,000 could keep appreciating. It could go to, 10% return a year, 20% return a year. I'm not giving you investment advice. I have no idea. But that's speculative, right? In theory, it can decline in value, right? So, that is a caveat to think of. A second caveat to think of is the issue of the step-up in basis at death. So this Section 121 exclusion, $250,000 per person, is a great way to handle that primary residence capital gain. But in theory, you have another tool in the toolbox. That is the step-up in basis at death. Now, here's the issue with that. You now have to hold on for dear life, right? You're now committed to this property for the rest of your life. But if if that's desirable to you, you hold it, you rent it out. At the end of your life, you pass it on to your heirs. You can get that step-up in basis at death, and that can take care of the capital gain. So that could be a really good way of handling it, but it requires a different investment decision. But it would at least make foregoing the 121 exclusion on the $250,000 of capital gain, irrelevant, because you took care of that gain with step up in basis at death. That's a good one. And then the third caveat is there are going to be some Americans, this is going to be mostly in the well-to-do urban areas, where the $500,000 gain exclusion is a nice offer, but not worth it. So say your capital gain isn't $400,000 like my example, maybe your capital gain is $1 million, and maybe you live in somewhere in California. Well, in that case, let's say it's a married couple, $1 million gain, they get to exclude the $500,000 based on the capital gain exclusion for a primary residence, but they still have $500,000 of taxable capital gain. And by the way, that'll be subject to federal capital gain tax plus the net investment income tax, plus it's going to be subject to California income tax, likely at a rate of 10.3%, 11.3%, 12.3%, something like that. So you might be saying, well, thanks, but no thanks on that capital gain exclusion. So my point is, you ought to think long and hard before becoming an accidental landlord, because you could be foregoing a very valuable capital gains tax exclusion that only lasts 3 years when you become an accidental landlord. I'm Sean Mullaney. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please mash that like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.